The same way a baseball player needs a bat or a drummer needs drumsticks, there's essential items that every candle maker must have in their shop. So in today's episode, we're going to cover exactly what that is. It's Kevin from Armatage Candle Company, the premier online resource for accelerating your candle making technique and business. And in today's episode, we're going to cover 3 items you will find in every successful candle maker's workshop. Now, these items are not really negotiable. You almost have to have them to do anything. And I really mean that. When you go into any candle maker's workshop, you're going to find these 3 items because they're just that important for making candles. So the first item is a scale. Every single candle maker needs to have some sort of scale. And what I mean by scale is like a kitchen scale. And the reason we have this is every single material in candle making is measured by weight. We measure our wax by weight. We measure our fragrance oil by weight. And a big part of that comes from the nature of the supplies and how they're specified and all the chemistry around all of that. But we can't do a single thing right, or really accurately is a better word for it, if we don't have a scale. So we need a scale that can measure anything in grams or ounces. And I guess super easy to find. You can go to Amazon, you can go to Target or Walmart, whatever's in your area that sells normal household goods, because kitchen scales are really all you need. You don't need anything that's super scientific. Now, the one thing you'll want to think about when you buy a scale is to see what the maximum capacity is, because if you're shipping items out, if you're running a candle business or you intend on, make sure you have a scale that can weigh out about what you think would get there. And I would say capacity that's appropriate for what you're shipping out, because a lot of shipping requires you to know the weight of your final package. And those 2 scales don't have to be the same thing. You can have a kitchen scale for when you're measuring out supplies for your batch of wax, and you could have a scale that's dedicated for shipping supplies. Maybe it's not as granular. And so find what works best for you, but you have to have a scale. The second thing every candle maker will have in their workshop is a thermometer. Temperature management is the #1 ingredient for a good candle. It's not only for making candles, it's also pertinent for testing candles. You see, building a temperature management plan for how hot you're going to heat the wax, what temperature you're going to add the fragrance oil, and when you're going to pour, all of those things can't just be measured by feeling. They have to be measured with a device. And so you have 2 options for this. You can use a glass thermometer, which typically hooks on to the end, but you have to dip it into the wax to use. Or more commonly these days, I see people using infrared thermometers. It's what I use. And infrared thermometers, you just point and shoot and it gives you the temperature. Now, be careful not to mix these 2 methods if you are making candles and you have both, because there can be some differences between those 2 devices. So consistency is extremely important when it comes to measuring temperature. Now, the third and final item that almost every single candle maker is going to have in their workshop is a pour pot. An aluminum pour pot, more specifically. That seems to be the most common item. And these pour pots are super good for melting down wax, and they're also really hardy for resisting heat, because typically when you're making candles, these bad boys are going to go through a little wear and tear, because you're either going to be putting them in a double boiler, which is the boiling pot of water, or you may be using them directly on a hot plate, for instance. Now, some candle makers are still going to use them, but maybe they don't melt their wax in it, but they pour their melted wax into it. And the reason is that they're really good for transferring wax or wax blend into a container or a mold, whatever you're making. So aluminum pour pot, absolute must, highly recommend. Most of the time, the most common ones are the 4-pound pour pots, but you can also find 2-pound pour pots, and I'm sure if you looked hard enough, you could find one even bigger than that. So final bonus item that every candle maker will probably have in their workshop is a heat gun. Now, heat guns, I did a whole video on heat guns because I believe that they are kind of the magic sauce that makes the really good candle makers stand out from the hobbyist candle makers. And that's because heat guns are so versatile. You can use them to preheat your containers. You can use them to clean wax. You can use them to fix your tops. They have a lot of uses, and they're freaking sweet. But anyways, those are the 3 items and the bonus item. Get yourself a scale, a thermometer, a pour pot. If you really want to go ham, get yourself a heat gun. They're awesome. That's all I have for today's episode. If you found any of this helpful, useful, or entertaining, please leave me a like. If you have any questions, leave me a comment. Otherwise, I hope you have a great week. I hope you make beautiful candles, and I will see you in the next episode.